will the middle class, pursuing its own self-interest, not trying to save the planet, but pursuing its own self-interest and values, provide the incentives to steer the global economy in a new direction? So remember the old Greek adage that the pursuit of happiness means living well and doing things in the right way? I think we now have enough data to show that the middle class is taking this seriously on a massive scale. And the first piece of evidence is that already more than 2/3 of the largest consumer-facing businesses in the world have made net zero pledges. These companies are trying to build brand loyalty to maximize their profits. But in doing so, they're changing the face of climate economics. And you might just say, well, that's just, corporates trying to be good global citizens and business leaders realizing they have a duty to change. But it isn't. The only good corporate citizens are those who have to explain themselves to consumers. Amongst businesses that don't face consumers, the so-called business-to-business companies, only 5% have made net zero pledges. It's the consumer-oriented companies that are desperate to attract the Gen Zers that I talked about. You see, the Gen Zers are going to be the largest, wealthiest generation ever. The succeeding generation, Generation Alpha, is smaller in size because of fewer births, and you probably heard about that yesterday. And the earlier generation isn't inheriting as much wealth from their parents as Gen Zers. And so Gen Zers have become the target group for all consumer companies. And they are why companies are paying so much attention to their preferences and attitudes. And what they see is more than half of all Gen Zers are positively inclined to buy things from a brand that's dedicated to social impact, gives proceeds to charity, is environmentally conscious, and has strong values. So I'm wearing Warby Parker glasses. And when I bought these, the company said they would give a pair of glasses to someone else who needs one. So their business model is built around attracting socially aware customers. And there are hundreds of such examples. You've got Tom's, you've got Bombas, you've got Rent the Runway. They're all developing programs or entire business models built around sustainability. And that's the new power of the middle class. By integrating their values into their choices, they're moving markets. So that issues that for years have been unable to advance beyond a narrow circle of advocates, they're now gaining traction because they have these billions of middle-class consumers behind them. I'm an economist, and so I think that that is of huge importance, because whenever something can be commercialized, it can be scaled for impact. And that's what we need now. So we're starting to see an astonishing array of innovations to solve planetary problems. So car seats, leather belts, shoes are now being made from mushrooms rather than from cows. You have aftermarkets developing for all kinds of used products and materials. You throw away a shirt or carpet, all of those materials and fibers get chopped up and separated and made into new products again. Those kinds of innovations cost money to develop, but companies are prepared to invest in it because they can recoup their costs by selling their products or their technologies on a mass scale to the middle class. And so it's that power of the middle class wallet, what I mentioned, $60 trillion every year, that's now developing a new kind of sustainable economy. So you might say, well, why now? Why hasn't this already started to gain hold? And part of the answer, I think, is that until now, companies could easily basically game the system. And you had a lot of companies who have pretended to be sustainable while actually engaging in some fairly awful practices. So, we have a massive degree of what's called greenwashing that's going on. But starting next year, in the United States, in the United Kingdom, in Europe, in Japan, and in many other advanced and developing countries, we will have mandatory, comprehensive standards for reporting carbon emissions and other sustainability practices for all large publicly listed companies. So every country will have its own standards, but there's been a lot of dialogue to make sure that all of these standards are interoperable so that companies doing business in multiple jurisdictions won't have to file multiple reports. And that basic structure has been developed by something called the International Sustainable Standards Board. So these new global standards for how companies report information will allow consumers and investors to identify the most sustainable companies, in much the same way as global accounting standards allow investors to see which companies are the most profitable. And it's a profound change in the marketplace that could have dramatic consequences for sustainability.